All right, top of the morning, top of the evening, top of the night, whatever time zone you are on. We are live. Hello, everybody. A moment of silence for all those who have lost their lives. Let's remember this. If we can look up, we can get up. If we can get up, we can go up. With that being said, coronavirus cases are up in Michigan. They're almost at 700,000. And we have the variant here, B117. One of the worst variants is up here. We're state number 2 that's saturated with that variant. First state is Texas. Michigan is second. So coronavirus, we still need to do what we need to do. Wash your hands and wear a mask, because there's still a lot of people here not wearing a mask. And hopefully everybody's been doing the best that they can in the situation that they are in. Now, let me do the disclaimer. We're going to get right into this. Disclaimer. This is not for kids. Graphic content will be used and shown. Having said that, let's get right into the music, and I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Just clicking in the back. Here we go.
Hush now, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination. Though you may find from time to time complications. Just move on up for peace you'll find into the steeple of beautiful people where there's only one kind. So hush now, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Move on up and keep on wishing. Remember, your dream is your only scheme, so keep on pushing. Take nothing less than the supreme best. Do not obey, rumors people say, but you can pass the test. Just move on up to a greater day. With just a little faith, if you put your mind to it, you can surely do it. Just move on up. Move on up. We move on up. Watch out, we just move on up. We move on up. Move on up.
All right. Hey, Cha-Cha. Thanks, Letha, Pete Legal Intel, Cha-Cha, Bushes. Thank you so much for watching, Cha-Cha. With that being said, we're going to get right into this. This has been, for those who are on Eastern Standard Time Zone, we are still in the day of Monday. And this is the first day of the Derek Chevron's trial. So we're going to listen to some of what the three witnesses had to say. I'm going to start with the 911, then I'll go to the store clerk, and then I'll go to the African-American business owner and entrepreneur who is trained in various forms of mixed martial arts. And I haven't heard any of the witness testimony from the 911 call. So this will be my first time hearing it. I did hear this too. So let's just take a listen. Let the records show. These are witnesses who were present or had some knowledge, first person, of the incident that occurred that day. This is not a second hand or third hand. So we're dealing with people in real time during that moment. Witnesses, their testimony of what they saw happen that day. So, or the call that they took that day pertaining to the incident. Said it's kind of nippy in the bushes. Well, all right. Here we go. Again, no nonsense news. We stay actively engaged in accordance to the Copyright Act of the United States of America, sections 106, 107, and the others, fair use. I have a right to use the video footage, the images, pictures, so on and so forth and the like, as this matter is now a public information in accordance to the Freedom of Information Act. Let's go. Let's go. Here we go.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start showing Exhibit 11, and I'm going to let it run for about 15 seconds, and then I'm going to pause it, okay? All right, so if you could do that, please. All right, so I'm going to ask to pause it right here. Now, as I said, other than cutting out the big sign on the right side, does this fairly depict what you were able to see when you looked up at the screens on May 25th of 2020 regarding this incident?
Correct.
And you said when you first saw it, there were no officers. Now we obviously have seen some officers walking into view. Were you still able to watch it when they did walk into view?
I was in and out of this video, so I do not remember them walking to the car.
All right. And what do you remember, seeing the next time that you looked up?
I believe they were getting into the back of the squad car.
And Do you remember then the next time that you were able to see it, generally what was depicted?
I believe they were still trying to get into the back of the squad car. It was moving a little bit, and then I went back to my screens.
And I think what I'd like to do is have this run, and if you could just watch the video and tell the jurors, when you were able to look up what parts that you remember seeing that day during your shift, okay?
Okay.
All right.
I believe this is close to where I started watching.
So obviously you can see some police officers here. Did you recognize them individually?
And then I know I didn't watch that much, and then the next time I looked, they were opening the door. I do remember that.
Which door do you mean?
The driver's side back seat. This is what I remember seeing.
And so for the record, we see the officers now trying to put Mr. Floyd into the back seat, correct?
Correct.
The timestamp on the top, for the record, reflects about 8:17 and 10 seconds when you said that, approximately.
Yes.
Now the officers have opened a rear passenger door. Do you remember seeing this part of the video?
Yes. I remember seeing the squad move.
And what do you mean by move?
So like now you can see the squad is moving back and forth.
It's not like being driven, but moving back and forth.
Right.
And for the record now, the timestamp at the top is 8:17:50 approximately.
And I know I wasn't able to watch all of this.
So at some point here, you had to turn away and do your job.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember what was the next thing you remember seeing?
The next time I remember looking up is they had moved from the back of the squad to the ground.
Right. And so when you see that, let me know and we'll just make a reference to it at that time, okay?
Okay. I don't exactly know when they moved to the ground. I just know that when I looked up,
Right.
we were no longer in the back seat.
because you've told us that you remember seeing them on the ground with him, I want you to point out the time in the video that looks familiar to what you remember seeing when you say that you saw them on the ground with him, just so that we know, okay?
Okay. I believe this is when I started watching again.
So for the record, the timestamp at the top reflects 8/19/25. So this is what you mean by them having him on the ground.
Correct.
Do you recall how long you were able to watch around this time?
No, honestly, I was in and out of looking at the cameras and then going back to my screens to make sure I wasn't missing anything, added remarks, getting out calls, and then would go back to the screen again.
Now, and actually I think what I'll do is just pause it here. After seeing this, at some point, then did you look back to the screen?
To back to working?
No, back to this video of the scene.
Yes, I was in and out of looking at this screen and then my work.
And at some point then, did you go back to this and how did it appear at that time when you went back to it?
It had not changed.
And what do you mean by that?
They were still on the ground. The whole situation was still the same.
Had there been other changes to the scene? Were there other people in the...
I didn't pay attention to the surroundings of what was going on. I just know that they hadn't moved.
All right. But at some point, did you see other citizens in the video?
I cannot remember seeing them. I just remembered looking up and seeing that the situation hadn't changed.
Do you recall approximately how long that was?
No, it was long enough. It was long enough that I could look back multiple times.
And so when you did look back, still on the ground, like depicted here, essentially.
Correct.
And what did you think about this when you looked back and saw that it hadn't changed?
I first asked if the screens had frozen.
Why did you ask that?
Because it hadn't changed.
Okay. And did you find that it had frozen?
No.
How did
Well,
you
I
know?
was told that it was not frozen.
Did you see the screen change yourself?
Yes, I saw the person's moving.
So what did you start thinking at that point?
Something might be wrong.
Why?
We don't get these videos often, or video at all, unless it's looking at the bridge or just looking at people walking. We very rarely get incidents where police are actively on a scene. And they had changed. They had come from the back of the squad to the ground, and my instincts were telling me that something's wrong. Something is not right. I don't know what, but something wasn't right.
In what ways were you thinking that something was not right?
It was an extended period of time. Again, I can't tell you the exact amount of time. And they hadn't told me if they needed any more resources. It's a multitude of different things that ran through my brain, but I became concerned that something might be wrong.
Wrong with what? What are you thinking?
It was a gut instinct of in the incident something's not going right, whether it be they needed more assistance or if there just something wasn't right. I don't know how to explain it. It was a gut instinct to tell me that now we can be concerned.
And what did you decide to do?
I took that instinct and I called the sergeant.
And do you recall who the sergeant was that you talked to?
It was Sergeant Pluger.
And why did you call a sergeant?
The sergeant is the police officer's supervisor.
You're not a Minneapolis police officer.
No.
You haven't gone through like the use of force training.
No.
But in your experience, you felt something was wrong here that a sergeant needed to know about.
Correct. If this was a form of use of force, I was calling to let them know.
Why would you involve a sergeant in a call that might involve the use of force?
Sergeants are usually always notified for use of force.
And so did you in fact call Sergeant Pluger?
I did.
Have you ever in your career before called a sergeant for something like this?
Multiple. For an incident like this?
Right.
To be exact, no.
Okay. Where you had this instinct and felt something was wrong and you needed to call a sergeant about it. Have you ever had that incident or that situation before this incident?
If something was wrong with a call, yes. And not, I don't know how to say this, not if, I can call the sergeant for anything because they are a resource. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But I can call them regarding calls if something doesn't look right in a call, if there's a caution note, if there's something that they can do beyond the scope of the call, I can call them.
And have you had a chance to listen to a recording of that call you actually made?
Yes.
And that recording is made as part of the business of the call center, it records that traffic.
Everything's recorded.
Right. And we played a recording of that for you previously,
Yes.
and was it an accurate recording of your call?
Yes.
And we've now marked that as Exhibit 12. Your Honor, we would offer Exhibit 12.
12 was received.
And at this time, we'll play that call, all right?
2030-44, May 25, 2020.
Hey, this is Jenna with Channel 1. Hey, what's up? Hey, so just wanted to let you know about the person with a knife at 2602 Bloomington. And then, I didn't know, you can call me a snitch if you want to, but we have the cameras up for 320's call. Oh, did they already put him in the, they must have already started moving him. And 320 over at Cup Foods.
Okay.
I don't know if they had used force or not. They got something out of the back of the squad, and all of them sat on this man. So I don't know if they needed you or not, but they haven't said anything to me yet.
Yeah, they haven't said anything unless it's just a takedown, which doesn't count, but
Okay,
I'll find out.
no problem. We don't get to ever see it, so when we see it, we're just like, well, that looks a little different. All right, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.
2031-33, May 25, 2020.
So I'm going to walk through that just a little bit. At the very beginning, you spoke kind of fast and you identified yourself. Can you just describe for the jury what you were saying there?
I told them my name was Jenna and that I was Channel 1 dispatch.
So that's meaning the dispatch for 3rd Precinct.
Correct.
And then you talked about something involving a knife. Is that related to this case at all?
No.
That was from some other call?
Correct.
And then you used the term snitch.
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
At that moment, it was a word that just came out of my mouth, but it's out of the scope of my duties to call a sergeant if there was any use of force.
And so that's what the purpose, well, tell me, what was the purpose of making that call to him and giving him that information?
Voicing my concerns. Like I said, we don't see incidents. My job is mainly all listening.
And by the time you made that call, you said something to Sergeant Pleger about, oh, did they take him already? By the time you made that call, were you still able to see the video from the street camera?
Yes, the video was still up.
And what did you see at the time that you were making that call?
That nobody was there.
So you were aware an ambulance had come to the scene,
Yes,
but the ambulance was not in the video at that time.
correct.
So is that the reason why you made a reference to them being gone?
Yes, so I was speaking to the rest of my team over there and asking a question to them while still on the phone with the sergeant.
So probably a better time for me to ask this question, but have you ever, prior to that date, made a call like that to a sergeant
No,
in your job? All right, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, and so that is that's the first witness, and what you have is the prosecutors asking the question, and quite naturally, you had the defendant asking, cross-examining and asking questions as well. But I'm not going to play all of that because we're not going to be here for a plethora of hours today. I'm going to move on expediently to the next video.
All right.
So this will be witness number 2. And I want to say this, attorneys, whether they were trial attorneys, public defendants, prosecutors, some judges or whatever, were just making statements about what they felt about each witness. And so witness number 2 is very interesting for many. Some, commentators were saying, oh, she probably would blow the case for the prosecution and different things like that. My perspective, however, listening to her was a bit different. Number 1, the witnesses didn't choose the incident that they saw that occurred that day. The incident that occurred chose the witnesses because the incident happened while they were present. Period. Again, first person there in real time with knowledge, firsthand knowledge, firsthand witnesses, first person witnesses. So for me, what she recorded, in addition to the cameras, the surveillance cameras that are throughout the premises, inside, outside, and what the dispatch was able to see, was vital. And that's why I have let the record show. So for me, if she said nothing at all, the video footage she captures shows, it speaks for itself. So let the record show. The evidence, the video footage presented speaks for itself. If she says nothing at all, what she did capture that day was vital, which was evidence, digital evidence. So having said that, I'm going to play witness number 2 because my perspective was a bit different from others who were pontificating. But I have to no nonsense it. If she said nothing at all, what she had was vital, and that was the evidence. Not only that, she was there in real time. That's vital. She captured video footage. That was vital. So let the record show. If she didn't get up and mumble a word, that video footage, that evidence that she submitted speaks volumes. It stands alone. All right.
So first, I'm going to ask you a few questions so we can get to know you a little better. How old are you?
23.
23. And are you originally from Minnesota?
No.
Where did you grow up?
No, I'm from Arizona.
You can kind of pull back. You're actually speaking.
I'm sorry. I don't like this. Okay.
I understand. Yeah, I just need to speak coincidentally.
Okay, are we good? All right.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can even pretend you're yelling at me if you want to, or make your voice hit the back of the room, all right?
Okay.
So you said that you grew up in Arizona, is that right?
Yep.
What part of Arizona?
Just Arizona.
The whole state?
Yep.
Okay. When did you make your way over to Minnesota?
I don't know. A while ago.
Were you still in high school?
Yeah.
Did you attend any schools when you moved to Minnesota?
Yeah.
Where did you go to school?
Red Wing.
In Red Wing, Minnesota. Where else did you go?
St. Paul.
St. Paul. Okay. What's the last grade you completed through high school?
11.
Okay. Can you tell the jury the different cities or towns that you've lived in since coming to Minnesota?
I guess Minneapolis.
Okay. Minneapolis, and I assume Red Wing for one?
Yeah, St. Paul.
And St. Paul. Okay. Are you currently employed?
No.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about the types of jobs that you've held?
I used to work at Speedway.
And which speedway do you recall the location?
38th in Chicago.
Right. What did you do at Speedway at 38th in Chicago?
I'm a shift lead.
Shift lead? What does that mean?
Not like a regular employee, but not a manager, like kind of in the middle.
Okay. So not a lot of us have had the experience of working as a shift lead at Speedway, so I'd like you to just tell the jury a little bit of what's your day-to-day job like when you have that job?
I work at a cash register. I do paperwork. If a customer has an issue, I handle the issues.
Okay. You also work as a cashier?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to train other people or supervise other cashiers?
Sometimes.
How long did you have that job, Miss Layler?
About a year.
Did you start as a shift lead, or did you have a different position? You started as a shift lead? Can you tell the jury a little bit about the types of hours you would work there? Was it a full-time job?
Yep, I work 40 hours a week.
Okay.
Well, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. When did you typically start your shift?
Between 2 or 3 to closing, 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock was closing?
Yeah.
Was it a pretty busy store?
It has its moments.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see if you recognize the area. First, I'd like to show just the witness what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 1. Oh. Do you recognize what's shown in Exhibit 1?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see the speedway where you used to work?
Yeah.
I'm going to speak up a little bit.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. So, do you have something that looks like this in front of you? Little stylus? All right. What I'd like you to do is just take this and see if you can draw a circle around the speedway where you used to work. Thank you. Right. And the name of the store directly across the street, were you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
What's the name of that store?
Cup Foods.
You ever go in that store? Were you a customer there?
Not really.
Not really? Just the place across the street where you worked?
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you see what's directly across the street if you cross 38th Street from Cup Foods?
Yeah.
Do you recognize that building?
Yeah, I didn't know that's what it was though.
What did you know it was?
I never really paid attention to it.
Okay. Well, do you recall whether or not you were working on May 25, 2020, Memorial Day?
Yeah.
And where were you working?
At Speedway.
At Speedway, all right. And do you recall when you began your shift?
About 3 o'clock.
And do you recall specifically what you were doing at the Speedway that day?
Ringing up customers.
And at the cash register?
Yeah.
Can you just, again, using your stylus, point or take a, maybe put a little X around the area in front of the store where the cash register would be?
Like right here.
Okay. Are you able to see the outside across the street from the cash register?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes? And you said you began working at 3. I'd like to draw your attention to a little after 8 o'clock in the evening that day. Do you recall something that caught your attention outside of the Speedway?
Yeah.
You tell the jury what caught your attention.
The police, like in that area, it's always police.
When did you first notice, or where did you first notice the police?
I would say like on the corner, right, like diagonal, like across the street, like right here. Oops.
Okay. And so for the record, that's across from Cup Foods, across 38th Street in what is labeled on Exhibit 1 as Dragon Walk. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Please tell the jury in your own words what it is you saw that caught your attention.
Just the police, try not to cuss, just the messing with someone.
Okay. And when you say messing with someone, and thank you for not cussing, but when you say messing with someone, could you please describe what you mean by that?
Like, I don't really know how to explain it, just like disturbing somebody before I found out who it was.
Okay. Now, did you eventually find out who the person the police were disturbing, in your words?
Yeah.
Who's that?
George Floyd.
Had you ever met this person before?
No.
To your knowledge, he'd never been a customer in the Speedway?
No.
Okay. Can you please describe for the jury what you saw after you first noticed the police having this interaction with the person you now know to be Mr. Floyd?
Can you say that again?
So can you just describe, after you first noticed the police having this interaction with Mr. Floyd, what did you see happen?
In my handcuffs.
You saw. Where was Mr. Floyd when you saw him in handcuffs?
Over here across the street.
Okay. In the area where you first indicated by the Dragon Walk?
I believe so, yeah.
And then what did you see happen after Mr. Floyd was in handcuffs?
I don't remember.
What's the next thing you do remember?
Oh, God.
Are you a little nervous today?
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. Just take your time. And we have plenty of time to get through this, okay? And so, just backing up, you'd indicated that Mr. Floyd was in handcuffs, and just think to yourself what you next remember seeing after you noticed he was in handcuffs.
I think they ended up putting him in the police car thing.
And which police car? Where was the police car that you saw?
The one right across from Cut Foods.
Okay. Now, before you saw that, did you see the police take Mr. Floyd across the street?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes? All right. So after you saw him in handcuffs, you saw him being taken across the street and then placed in the car right outside of Cut Foods. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And you owned a cell phone, correct?
Yeah.
You owned a cell phone at the time. Yes?
Yes.
And did you do anything with your cell phone as you began to notice this incident involving Mr. Floyd and the police?
Well, as you guys seen that on the security thing that I had my phone.
Right, you had your phone. Did you do anything with your phone?
Like recording it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do first, before we get to the point where you start recording, just explain to the jury what you saw after you noticed the police officers putting Mr. Floyd in the car.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I can't think right now.
Well, you indicated that you began recording with your cell phone. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And during the time that you've been speaking to the police about this, you've provided your cell phone recordings to law enforcement. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
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 All right. And there were a total of 7 cell phone recordings that you personally took. Is that correct?
Yes.
You've reviewed each of those cell phone recordings, correct?
Yeah.
And those cell phone recordings, do they fairly and accurately depict what you saw on the street that day?
Yeah.
And 2 of those cell phone recordings were actually made from inside the store, correct?
Yes.
And then the rest were outside of the store.
Yeah.
Now, those cell phone recordings, the individual clips, have been marked and disclosed to counsel as exhibits 2 through 8. You wouldn't know that, but they have. And at this time, I'm going to offer exhibits 2 through 8. Yeah.
Any objection?
No, you're
2 through 8 are received.
And then, Ms. Euler, you also had an opportunity to review a surveillance video. Is that right?
Yes.
And the surveillance video, for the record, is Exhibit 11. Having reviewed that video, did that video, fairly and accurately capture things that you observed when you were working at Speedway on the 25th?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were able to review that surveillance video in a format in which all of your cell phone videos, or I guess I should say 6 of the 7 cell phone videos, had been spliced into or put next to the surveillance video, correct?
Yes.
And that kind of gives a perspective of when those individual videos were shot. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then the combination of the 6 videos that we've just received and Exhibit 11, which has been offered and received, would that composition better help you and assist you in explaining your testimony to the jury?
Yes.
All right. And that, for the record, is Exhibit 9. I offer Exhibit 9.
Any objection? 9 is received.
And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and publish Exhibit 9. I ask you to take Exhibit 1 down. And when I say publish, I mean I'm going to play it, and at times I'm going to stop and pause and have you explain some things. All right?
Okay. Okay.
All right. If we could begin publishing Exhibit 9, please. And I believe we're paused at 7 seconds. At this point, you can see, and I'm going to place a circle around the officers. You see them there?
Yes.
And are those the people that you saw interacting with the person you now know to be Mr. Floyd?
Yep.
And your first interaction that you noticed was actually across the street by the Dragon Walk. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, as Mr. Floyd's being taken over the car, I think that we will soon hear your first recording. So if we could resume play.
And so that was witness number 3. Like I said, I'm not showing all of it all the way through because we would be here for a plethora of hours. And different people had multiple things to say about her testimony of what she saw. But again, I have to know nonsense and let the record show. She came with proofs. She came with evidence that was admissible in the court of law, and that was extremely vital to this case. So if she got up and remembered nothing or said nothing, let the record show. The evidence stands alone. Now we'll move on to the third witness. And P-Legal Intel, you're right, she's young, probably really didn't want to be there, but she knows how vital it is in terms of getting justice and not allowing the police to continuously be immune, not be held accountable for their actions. And the family members receive no type of justice because, again, no one is supposed to be above the law in the United States of America, where the law is created for the lawful or the lawless. Age-old question. And I have to reiterate, if she said nothing, let the record show that she brought something that was extremely vital and crucial to this case, and that's digital evidence that she captured in real time as an incident was occurring, first person. All right, now we'll move on to witness number 3. And I found, before we move on to witness number 3, I found it a little bit interesting that they were having technical difficulties and the feeds just happened to stop. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Could take me down a path of speculation. but I captured my thoughts. All right. All right. So again, this is Charuvin's trial. These are the witnesses who were there in the moment. Firsthand knowledge of that day. They're speaking. So go to the next video. This is witness number 3. Let me make sure. I'm gonna have to, I think this is the long one. So I'm gonna have to make sure I am where I need to be in this video, because this is about, the one that I have now is about probably over 4 hours. So I'm going to fast forward this towards the end for witness number 3, who is the entrepreneur who is trained in jiu-jitsu and other martial art forms, who also wrestled and who also worked security and a host of other things. So let me play this. I don't know if we're right where we need to be. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, we are. Okay. Very well. Okay. Yeah. We're here with the third witnesses walking in.
Stand behind the chair for a second. Yes, sir. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do, sir.
Have a seat.
Yes, Your Honor.
And just to test out the microphone, if you could give us your full name, spelling each of your names.
Full name is Donald Wynn Williams II. D-O-N-A-L-D. W-Y-N-N-I, or W-Y-N-N, last name W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S, the second.
Thank you. Mr. Frank.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell the jurors roughly how old are you?
33.
Okay. And what do you do for a living?
I'm an entrepreneur and a professional fighter. And a father.
And a what?
And a father.
And that takes up probably as much time as all the others.
Yes, it does.
So you, by entrepreneur, you have some of your own companies that you run.
That is correct.
Various businesses.
Correct.
And tell the jury, if you would, sort of where you live, not your address, but the city or town where you live.
I'm in a unique situation, but I do have a place in Roseville in South Minneapolis.
And your place in South Minneapolis, well, are you familiar with Cup Foods?
That is correct.
And how far is your place from Cup Foods, roughly?
Not too far from Cubs.
Good enough. Good enough.
So like literally, yeah, like on the next block, not too far down.
So how long have you lived in the Twin Cities area, the Minneapolis area?
Minneapolis, Twin Cities area for 33 years, pretty much my whole life. I'm a city kid.
Okay. And Mr. Williams, well, before I forget to ask you, you've done some work in the security field.
That is correct. Been working in security for over 10 years.
And what does that mean? What do you do to work in security?
As far as security, private security, worked at the clubs, at Pichaluches, different clubs downtown Minneapolis. Worked at Allied Security for a year before this situation as well. And I've done private security for the Mystic Lake kids as well. So I've been working security for quite a few years.
And so that means everything from, I suppose, being what we might think of as a bouncer to just keeping...
Yeah, so from being a bouncer to a private security, like I said, being a door guy to like escorting someone to high profile athletes as well too. Some of the comedians that came into Minnesota, and like I said, some of the high profile kids from Mystic Lake, that families own Mystic Lake. I've done multiple private securities for them as well on different events throughout Minnesota.
So for doing that job, do you have to learn some use of force?
Correct. Well, my uniqueness is I'm a wrestler from high school that developed into martial artist. So that's what gave me more opportunity to be able to do the private security and things like that, and just other connections from the mixed martial arts world, from my previous manager to the different friends inside of my circle.
And when you're doing security, do you sometimes have the opportunity to work with Minneapolis police officers?
That is correct. I've worked side by side with Minneapolis Police Departments and Minneapolis Police since I was 21 years old. And again, I'm 33 years old right now. I work downtown. Like Picha Luce brought me in a couple of years ago when one of the top guys, Antonio, left to go to Vegas and work out in Vegas. Picha Luce reached out to me and put me at the door, and I was able to control my city because I have a relationship with both sides of the city. It don't matter if it's business, streets, friends, different areas. My connection is pretty broad to the Twin Cities. So I'm able to talk certain people out of certain situations downtown from there. So, yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, so working security, you sometimes work with Minneapolis police officers who are also working security.
That is correct, off duty.
And sometimes when they're called in as police officers to an incident.
That is correct.
And since you mentioned the mixed martial arts, let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned also wrestling.
That is correct.
And when did you start in the sport of wrestling?
I started in 7th grade, or 7th grade.
Yeah, I haven't earned that yet.
Yeah, right. Hey, soon.
Somebody might be upset if you start calling me. But so you started wrestling at a very young age.
Correct.
And wrestling as a sport, what kind of things do you got to learn if you want to be a good wrestler?
That is correct.
What kind of things do you need to learn?
You need to learn, one, the mentality of being a wrestler. It's a hard pace, different grind. It's not really a sport, it's a lifestyle. You got to really learn the technique of wrestling, and then it's different. You got to learn the different atmospheres of wrestling as well. You could be the top guy wrestling in an arena where everyone hates you, and you're wrestling against someone that everybody wants you to win. So you got to be able to absorb all that and be able to move forward and perform. So those three things.
And how about the physical aspects of it? What kind of things do you need to do to be a good wrestler physically to beat your opponent?
Yeah, you have to be able to condition your body. You have to be able to do different circuits, different workouts, running. Just conditioning your body to be able to be an elite wrestler.
Is there a lot of using your weight to control the other person?
That is right, correct. When you first start wrestling, you don't really understand the weight shifting. You're kind of like falling all over the place. But then eventually you learn how to control your weight off of someone else's movement and body movement and things like that. So you know the different pressures and different just movement. And it's called flow wrestling. You eventually learn how to flow wrestle when it comes to that, and it's just like not being so resistant to everything.
And so you're saying flow, F-L-O-W, not?
Yeah, like flow, F-L-O, yeah, flow, W.
Wasn't sure if you said float or flow. So
flow,
got
F-L-O-W.
So would you tell the jurors then about your wrestling career?
Yeah, I wrestled Minneapolis Edison in high school. Again, I started in 7th grade, so I had to fast track and catch up to all the kids that was already better than me, because most kids started at 4 years old. So coming into Edison, they were a really good program at the time, probably the best one since 2006. I was able to transfer in, crack the lineup at Edison, and I was a multiple-time state entrant, a couple times sections champs, and I went on and wrestled in college as well at DCTC. I wrestled there for 1 year, and then went over and wrestled at RCTC, which is another junior college. And from there, I've just been growing into wrestling, learning different wrestling. I coached youth programs since I got out of high school, and I currently coach my kids right now. They currently wrestle, and different friends, kids as well, and help them develop their skills and to do different private lessons and things like that with them. So this all started from, you know, me being a 7th grader, playing in the backyard with some friends, and they. That's fine. He asked me to explain.
Yeah, but we're going to shorten it up a little bit because that's when we can ask you more questions.
Yes, sir.
It also helps our court reporter who is taking everything down on a stenographic machine.
Correct.
That way she can get a break between. So,
Yes, Your Honor.
thank you.
So I'm going to back you up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Just to ask you a couple specific questions. You mentioned DCTC.
Correct.
Can you describe for us what that is? What that is?
Dakota County Technical College.
Okay, so it's like a junior college
Yes,
wrestling.
junior college, correct.
And the other was RCTC?
Yep, Rochester Community College.
And so you wrestled at the college level.
Correct.
Then at some point, did you take up mixed martial arts?
Yes, about sophomore year at Rochester. I'm in a unique situation. I have my kid with me, so we kind of shifted towards getting our grades together and trying to create a plan to be able to wrestle in college eligibility wise. And I end up finding martial arts from different friends like Marcus Levesters, Jack Jusula, Varvin there, and Carey, and things like that. That were my coaches that wrestled, and they wrestled and coached me, and they ended up jumping into martial arts. And I came back to visit and kind of fell into the martial arts world with them.
So let me just cut you off.
So
you've done a lot in mixed martial arts. Right?
Yeah. So
I'm going to try and walk you through it a little bit.
Yep.
But what year was it that you started seriously training in mixed martial arts?
About let's see, 22, like 09-ish, like 09.
Have you been involved in it ever since?
I've been involved in it ever since, correct.
Continue to be involved in it?
Yeah, continue to be involved in it. As of the last 9 months, I have not been training.
Okay. And ever wrestled, done the mixed martial arts, what we call it, a fight, professionally?
Correct. Amateur. I got 10 amateur fights and about close to 20 professional fights.
So about 2009 you start?
Correct.
Through 2020, correct?
Correct.
How often during that time period are you in the gym training?
That's Monday through Friday. Like I devoted my life to mixed martial arts and my kids' life to mixed martial arts. So it's a 40 hours or more a week job at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy. I was in there majority in the mornings from 10 a.m. to sometimes 3 in the afternoon training for hopefully a fight.
So the Mixed Martial Arts Academy, that's the business where you trained?
That is the gym I train at, correct.
And when you were training there, did you ever did you ever train with Minneapolis police officers who were there?
Correct.
Describe that for the jury, please.
Not everybody they don't always let you know that they're a cop or CIA agent or FBI agent, but we all kind of link together because they're trying to learn how to be able to defend different chokes or be able to detain different people. So Greg Nelson, which is the head professor there, he's a unique guy. He's been able to work close with the military and the Army and the combative team. So we get a lot of Army combative people coming in and training with us just so they can learn how to, defend yourself in war, I'm taking. And so I've been training next to some of them for, like I said, a decade.
And some of them are Minneapolis police officers training there.
Yep, that is correct. And they're not all Minneapolis Police Department. They're from all different precincts, all different backgrounds of the law enforcement.
So when you're training in mixed martial arts, is part of the ultimate goal to get the other person to submit?
Yeah, that's the goal of it. Everybody gets into martial arts for different reasons. As you're rolling and understanding it, yes, your whole thing is to be able to get the person to submit when you do put a choke or a different submission on them.
So let me talk to you about that. So you're trained on what are called chokeholds.
Correct.
And what kind of training do you receive to do a chokehold?
Well, you go into a basic class. They teach you the basic techniques of jiu-jitsu, how to be able to defend yourself from the back, how to be able to defend off of a choke, and how to be able to put someone in a choke as well. And those are some of the basics that we learn from them.
So if we talk about specifically chokeholds involving the neck,
Correct.
did you also have to learn about the structures in the neck that can lead to a chokehold?
Correct.
And
Different. There's air chokes and there's blood chokes and there's limb chokes.
so explain the first two.
Air choke is more of like choking someone. They still have air to breathe in there, and they're able to, absorb it and feel it, and then you also have a choke where it's a blood choke where it specifically attacks the side of the neck and it specifically cuts off the circulation of your arteries and stops the differently blood flowing from top of your head to the bottom of your head. And sometimes you could get in a blood choke and not know you're in a blood choke until you're unconscious.
In your training, have there been times when you've been rendered unconscious through a chokehold?
Correct. I have been submitted on a professional level in live matches, and I have over 30 jiu-jitsu submission matches where I have got caught in a submission before on a rear neck choke and a front choke. Only have been only choked out twice in the jiu-jitsu side, but on my martial arts, on the fighting side, I've been submitted maybe 3 times on a side choke.
So in that training, do they have to teach you what that's like so you know to avoid it?
Yes, correct. So it's a uniqueness. You have to kind of like be acceptable to being choked. You can't just like not normal people can just really get choked. You got to relax. You got to be able to breathe. You got to be able to let the choke happen, and you got to be able to know when to actually tap out on the choke, because you're in practice. You're not trying to put this person to sleep, but you're trying to get them to understand how it feels to be choked. So we do go back and forth choking each other. Sometimes you'll see white stars when you get choked, and it kind of like helps you understand, when you went too far, and some people choke tolerance is higher than normal. Some are really low, where when you do put a blood choke, they're tapping right away, and some people will be able to absorb it and actually meditate there because they want to be able to be comfortable in the choke and be able to get out of it in live action.
So you use the term tap out, and what does that mean?
So tap out would be, for instance, so if I have you in a submission and I feel like it's getting to a certain point where it's not comfortable for me, I just tap my opponent, and my opponent releases his choke, and then we're back to grappling again. And I catch him in a submission, and if he's not comfortable, he taps. And this goes for the neck, limbs, and all that, so you don't harm each other during practice.
What can happen, have you learned through your training and experience, if you don't tap out, if a choke goes too far?
If you don't tap out, you can lose consciousness, and you can develop different, I'm not a doctor, but somnies from your brain to your body because of lack of oxygen and things like that.
So we talked about that a lot, but I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Correct.
We'll come back to that in a little bit.
Yes, sir.
I want to take your attention back to May 25th of 2020. You remember that day?
Correct, I do.
And on that day, at some point, did you go to Cup Foods?
Correct.
And prior to going to Cup Foods that day, had you done any activities with, for instance, your son?
Correct. Yeah, so earlier that day, I just went fishing with some wrestling friends, wrestling family, me and my son, and we caught maybe 3 bass throughout that whole day of fishing. It was a beautiful day during the day, so everybody was out on the lake, so we went fishing and caught 3 bass. After we got done fishing, rolled around a little bit, had to fish in a little bowl on the side, the boat swimming around the water, uncomfortableness. And once we got done fishing, we had to, drain the water, take our fish, and find somewhere to actually transport our fish back home on a, safe way, I guess, to their death. So we put them in a bag and tied them up, and we pretty much suffocated them on our way home for our ride.
So that you could enjoy them later.
Yeah, so we can actually cut them up, eat them, and freeze them, which are still in the freezer.
And so at some point then you decided to go to Cup Foods. Why did you decide to go there that day?
So I went to Cup Foods because I haven't cut a fish up in since I was about 23, working at a butcher at Solo grocery store. So me and the fish had we were going through some things of watching this fish actually die and watching him lose his air and watching his eyes actually roll back in the back of his head. So after we got done cutting them up, me and my son was actually watching on a YouTube channel trying to figure out how to actually cut the fish the proper way and make sure that we're doing it right, cutting the fins off, chopping the side of the head off, filleting the fish. So after I got done doing that, I just needed air for myself. So I went to the store to go get something to drink at the time, and I kind of just snuck out from the family once I got done cutting the fish.
So did you drive there?
That is correct, I did drive.
Okay, I'm going to show you something we've already received as Exhibit 1 on the screen. Can you show Exhibit 1, please? Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Correct.
All right. And this is the intersection of 38th and Chicago where Cup Foods is, correct?
Correct.
And you will notice on the bench in front of you one of these little styluses, hopefully.
Correct.
And you can draw on this, and I'd ask you just to show the jurors where you drove up and where you parked.
Is it showing up? Is it showing up on there or no?
I don't see it yet.
I don't see it either. Oh, there it goes. Came from that ankle. So I parked somewhere in here.
All right. So for the record, you drove down 38th Street towards Cup Foods and parked on 38th next to Cup Foods.
That is correct.
All right. Okay. And I'm going to show you some photographs to sort of help illustrate what you did that day. All right. And I'm going to first, Your Honor, offer Exhibit 18.
No objection.
18 is received.
Okay, can you put 18 up, please? Now, do you recognize this photograph?
Correct.
This is something we had shown to you before.
That is correct.
And who is that in the photograph?
That is Donald Wynn Williams II, which is me.
Okay. And is that you parked, the area where you parked on 38th?
That is correct.
And that's you walking up?
That is correct.
And can you describe for us what you're wearing, the sweatshirt that you're wearing?
Northside Boxing Club.
Okay. So that's not the academy where you train, that's just another club?
No, that is not. It's a youth gym for boxing.
And so when you decided to go to Cup Foods, did you get all dressed up and get ready for going out?
No, not at all.
Okay. This is just an outfit you threw on?
That is correct.
All right. When you were on your way to Cup Foods, did you grab your cell phone and take it with you?
That is correct.
You had it with you?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. And so after you got out of your car, as you walked up towards Cup Foods, did you notice any police cars in the area?
That is correct, I did.
Okay, and describe for the jurors and kind of what you saw as you're walking up.
As you can tell by my face expression, I was kind of like, oh, the police is here. And I noticed that there was 2 police squad cars out there. And I just had a look on my face like, oh, we're in the city, something else is going on. Should I get back to my car or not?
Okay. And what did you decide to do?
My energy just kept pushing me forward, and I kept walking.
Okay. And so you kept walking towards the store?
That is correct. I started walking towards Cup Foods entrance.
And did you end up going into Cup Foods?
No, I did not make it into Cup Foods.
Why not? What stopped you?
My energy stopped me, the surroundings stopped me, the energy of the air, just me as a person, if people know me personally, it just, the energy was off. I couldn't get in the door for some reason, and then once I realized why.
So when you came around, so Cup Food sits on the corner, correct?
That is correct.
So 18 shows you walking up on the 38th Street side.
Correct.
When you get around the corner, what is it that starts to affect your energy and your decision to go in the store or not?
Yeah, so I was just sitting at the door, just like, man, there's so much going over here. Do I involve myself? Because I'm usually, I pay attention to my city. So I was contemplating with myself, do I involve myself or do I go inside the store? I started hearing different voices from people that they know, telling someone that they just calm down, everything's gonna be okay. And then I heard, some people saying that, I'm looking from some point for their mother. And I heard another voice just saying that, you should let him up and that he's not resisting arrest. And there's just certain things that just kept boop, 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 hitting me while I was standing there, like, should I go in the door or not?
And did you go into the store then?
I did not go into the store.
All right. So now I'm going to show you, well, first I will offer Exhibit 19.
Any objection?
No.
19 is received.
Put 19 up, please. And do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
That is correct.
And is that you then walking along Chicago?
That is correct, walking on Chicago.
All right. So when you get into this area, what are you experiencing right here where you're walking along?
Again, like I said, I was just hearing different emotions, different comments, and at this point I just was kind of like observing. So I kind of like slowly trotted over there.
And we can see in Exhibit 19 there's a couple other people on the sidewalk here. Did you know any of those people as you walked up?
No, I did not know no one out there at all.
The first people that you see while you're there, you stayed at that area for quite a while, correct?
That is correct.
So the people that you first see as you're walking up, can you kind of describe how they looked or how they appeared to you, who they were?
Correct. Again, I don't know none of them. I just remember off of certain visualization that it was 3 people outside. It was an older guy, a younger lady, and maybe one more other gentleman out there. And yeah.
And then this photograph also shows in front of you a person with a green shirt. Do you remember seeing that person?
Not at all.
Okay.
Like she wasn't like in, she was there, but I didn't see her.
Okay. And so you, well, from where you are in this photograph, where did you go? What did you end up doing?
I believe I ended up probably standing next to this little spot right here where she's standing at a point. I probably was standing somewhere in here after I came from this way, and I just sat there and chilled right in this area for a second, observing like security officers do. I observed the scene first before I spoke.
And as you observed it, what are you seeing and hearing?
Well, once I get there, I hear an older guy saying it's gonna be okay, quit this and arrest. They're gonna get you up and put you in the car, and just hearing people, different people actually vocalizing their concerns to the officer, and hearing George on the ground pretty much pleading for his life, saying he's sorry, I can't breathe, I want my mom, just please let me up, and things like that.
So, while we still have Exhibit 19 up, can you show the jury after you got done observing, where did you go from there?
I've ended up somewhere in this vicinity throughout the whole time.
Okay. And so when you went over by the curb area there, what did you see happening on the ground behind the squad car?
Well, before I walked up, I noticed that it was an officer standing right here, kind of pretty much dictating the crowd from only standing on this curb right here where they're at. Noticed that part right away. And then I finally noticed it's going to be on the opposite side, but I noticed George's head was kind of sticking out from the side of the car. And then I noticed Officer Chavez right here with his knee circulated on George's neck, but this is all happening on this side of the car.
All right, we'll get to that in just a second while we're still on this photograph.
Correct.
When you went over there initially, did you leave the curb and go onto the street?
There is a possibility that I was battling with myself to stay on the curb and throughout the time. Correct.
We know later you went into the street area, but when you first got there, did you stay on the curb?
Yeah, when I first got there, I stayed right here. I didn't move too much right there. I stayed here, and I might have stepped down once or twice back and forth, but I can't 100% remember.
And you saw an officer standing in the area you showed us before.
He was about like somewhere.
Did you learn later that officer's name?
Yeah, I read his badge. I read his badge. Can I say his name right now? No. But at the time, I think I called him by his name from his badge, just from visualization, reading his badge. Was
it Officer Tao?
Correct.
All right. And you were able to read that from his badge on his uniform?
That's how much respect I try to give him at the beginning.
And so you saw him there?
Correct.
And what did you understand his role to be when you were observing?
He was a dictator. You know, he dictated what went on the curb. He controlled the people. He controlled me, and he was the guy that let it go on while it went on.
Now, you mentioned Mr. Floyd.
Correct.
Where was this individual you referred to as Mr. Floyd?
Can you please repeat that?
Sure. Where was this individual that you have referred to as Mr. Floyd?
Mr. Floyd, again, was on this side of the car, angled down by the tire area in this area, but on this side of the car.
And at this time, well, prior to coming into court, did we show you a photograph of the officer with Mr. Floyd on the ground?
Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, prior to court today, did we show you a photograph of that officer with Mr. Floyd on the ground?
That is correct.
And that photograph, did it fairly depict what you saw when you got there first?
That is correct.
Okay. Your Honor, to that extent, I would offer Exhibit 17.
Any objection? 17.
Now I'm going to show Exhibit 17 on the screen, and so this is what you saw when you came to that area on the curb there.
Yeah, this is what I saw, and the only reason why he's looking at me right now is because I told him it was a blood choke.
Okay, we will come back to that in a little bit. When you were there, was Mr. Floyd able to speak?
That is correctly. He was speaking in a distress way.
And what kinds of things led you to believe he was distressed?
He was vocalizing it to the officer. He said, "My stomach hurt, I can't breathe, my head hurts, I want my mom," and yeah, those are the things that he repeatedly said. He wanted to get out the car. He said he's sorry for what he did. He pleaded with my man and told him, like, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't pretty much have to die."
And so did you feel like you could have walked closer from this vantage point on the curb?
I could have. I felt that way in a way, but it was a fear factor as well.
And at this time, so you had seen Officer Tao, and you had seen this officer in Exhibit 17.
Correct.
On Mr. Floyd. Did you see any other officers at the scene at that time?
No, I did not.
All right. Were you, and so this in Exhibit 17 shows the vantage point you had, the view you had from where you were standing.
Correct. I only had that side view of the two officers and the shoulder length of George Floyd's head. Nothing else.
And when you were in this location, can you describe for the jurors what you saw about Mr. Floyd, how he appeared? Well, let me back up just for a second. You've used Mr. Floyd's name. Did you know him at the time?
I did not know Mr. Floyd at all. No real connection.
So you're using his name because you've learned since then who he is.
Correct. Can't go too many places without not knowing his name or seeing his face in Minnesota.
So when you're in this location, you first come up and you're seeing him, he's able to speak.
Correct.
Can you describe what you saw of Mr. Floyd's condition as time progressed here?
As time progressed, so when I first, like I said, when I first arrived on the scene, Mr. Floyd was vocalizing his sorriness and his pain and his distress that he was going through. The more that the knee was blocked on his neck and shimmies were going on, the more you seen Floyd fade away and slowly fade away, and like the fish in a bag, you seen his eyes slowly pale out and again slowly roll to the back of his eyes. And he, so this is what I seen, this is what I heard, and that's how, what it was. Like, he was going through distress because of the knee, and he vocalized it, that I can't breathe, I need to get up, and I'm sorry. And his eyes slowly rolled to the back of his head. You seen the blood coming out of his nose. You heard him tell him before he stopped speaking that my stomach hurts, and those most of the times is the last bowel movement of your life. So from there on, he was lifeless. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't have no life in him, no more on his body movements.
During that time period, did you notice anything about his breathing that was significant to you?
Yes, just like in MMA, you could tell when someone gets tired, or you could tell when someone's getting choked out or things like that. His breathing was getting tremendously heavy and tremendously harder for him to breathe, and you actually could hear him. You could see him struggling to actually gasp for air while he was trying to breathe, and I mean, he barely could move while he was trying to get air.
As you were standing there, did others gather around?
Correct. At the moment, I was the most vocalist person out there pleading for Floyd's life, because I felt like it was definitely in the wrong. And there was, at one point in time, a medic came on scene, and she spoke on checking pulse, what made me even go even more harder, because I heard it and then I registered in it, like, oh, you do need to check his pulse. Oh, he is not moving. Like, oh, you just killed this man, And so her expertise was like, look, he's fading away. You need to check his pulse. She's asking him multiple times. I'm asking him multiple times. No one checked his pulse.
Do you remember Officer Tao saying anything during this time period?
Yeah, he did what American does, and he blamed it on drugs for being a black man on the ground.
Let me just
Sorry about that. Yeah.
What did he say about drugs?
He said, "This is what drugs do to you," and I replied, "This is not what drugs do to you."
So, did that Officer Tao saying that help the situation?
No, it didn't. If I'll be honest with you, it pissed me off more because that wasn't the case. You know what I mean?
So, when you were there, seeing this, did you draw on your training and experience in wrestling and mixed martial arts to draw some conclusion about what this officer in Exhibit 17 was doing?
Can you go ahead and repeat that?
Yep, it's kind of a long question.
Yes, it was.
As you're standing there, seeing what you've described to the jury, did you draw on your training and experience in wrestling and mixed martial arts to get an idea of what this officer was doing physically there?
Correct. Yeah, so like as I'm standing there and observing everything, before I even spoke, if you've seen the video, I watched what was going on, and as he's positioned here before I even spoke to the officer, I watched the position, one, of where the position of the neck or the knee was on the neck, two, what body movements was going on while the knee was on the neck, and then three, what was the condition of George Floyd while he was going through this torture. One was that the neck was diagonal across the throat, which on a blood choke, you would tack the side of the neck, you know, and which you're in a CMRRA or side chokes or things like that, you want to tack the side of the neck to cut the circulation of the breathing from your person. And then to get the choke tighter, you hit different shimmies, which I felt the officer on top was shimmying to actually get the final choke in while he was on top to get the kill choke, because a side choke or a blood choke can ultimately turn into death, and that's what we've seen here.
And so,
Jury is to disregard the last statement by the witness.
just for the record, the last statement about leading to
The last statement. Proceed.
And, sorry. And so, did you think, you know, based on your training experience, that this looked like a blood choke?
That is correct.
And did you say that to the officer?
That's correct.
And how did he respond when you said that to him?
He looked at me right here. It's the only time he looked at me. When I said it was a blood choke, it's the only time he looked up. We looked each other dead in our eyes. Yeah, and when I said it, he acknowledged it.
And
like we're looking at each other right here.
okay.
Last statement is sustained as non-responsive.
And so when, I'm sorry. And Mr. Williams, from that vantage point depicted in Exhibit 17, that officer, do you see that person present in the courtroom today?
That's correct. He's standing right there.
Your Honor, has the record to reflect he's identified the defendant?
It will so reflect.
When you were there at the scene, did you at one point tell the officers that you were trained at the academy?
That is correct.
And what did you mean by academy?
A shortening for the Mixed Martial Arts Academy.
Now, as this was happening, did other people eventually come to the scene?
That is correct.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 184. Before we put that up, Your Honor, I would offer Exhibit 184. It's not on there. All right, we'll come back to that later. When this crowd was there, do you recall roughly how many people were there?
No, I do not.
Let's go look up.
At any time, did you hear anybody threaten to harm the officers?
No. Well, I wouldn't say harm. I mean, some kid came, the kid that might have called the police, or I'm not sure exactly from when I talked to him after the situation, but he did come out once he realized what was going on, and he almost like tried to rile the crowd back up, and I just kind of like, nah, just chill out, it's too late, you can't do that, just go back inside. So that was the only incident I recall of.
And when you did that to him, did he go back inside?
Yeah, he went back inside crying. He was a younger kid.
Okay. Now, earlier you mentioned the term shimmy.
Correct.
Which I've just been spelling S-H-I-M-M-Y. Good enough?
Yeah, good enough. You never gave it a spelling of it, but yeah, shimmy.
And so that's a move that you learned in your training for mixed martial arts holds.
That is correct.
And what's the purpose of doing a shimmy?
To get the choke tighter, to close the gap of the air between your arm and the neck.
And were there times that you saw things that you thought you recognized as a shimmy by this officer on Mr. Floyd?
That is definitely correct.
Your Honor, just for the record, we are going to show a portion of a video that I think counsel will stipulate to its admissibility. We'll lay full foundation for it tomorrow, and I'm only going to show a portion of it for this witness today. And that's Exhibit 15.
Any objection to the partial? Exhibit 15 will be received, subject to later foundation.
Now, Mr. Williams, you did not take any video at the scene yourself.
That is correct. No video.
And we had an opportunity to show you a video earlier, and did that video fairly and accurately depict what you were seeing there?
From a live angle, yes. From myself, yes.
All right. What I'm going to do is play a portion of Exhibit 15, and it's the time period roughly when you are there. And while we play it, I would just ask that you explain to the jury the things that you saw you would consider a shimmy, and just sort of explain how what it is that you're seeing to make you think that.
Correct.
Is that all right?
Yes.
All right. So we'll do Exhibit 15 starting at 44 seconds.
See, like he just did it right there. You see his foot is on his toe is pointed down, and you will see a small gesture in his back foot like this. And that's just the pressure get pushed more down between his knee, George's head, and the concrete, and cut it off circulation.
All right, and we'll continue on that, please.
Yeah, he just did it again.
And we saw that movement there that moves
Correct.
the knee on
And
the
his
neck.
foot, this time his foot came up off the ground, so no foot on the ground, so all the pressure is on his neck.
And you're talking about the foot on the same leg as the knee.
Yep, so correct. So it's the same foot on the knee, so it's like this is choke here, so this is, for instance, my neck here, and then for me to close it,
Right.
I shimmy,
Perfect
shimmy,
form.
shimmy, shimmy, and now I close the choke on the side of the neck.
And just for
So
the
I get
record,
my shimmy.
sorry,
Yeah.
just for the record, you're demonstrating with your arms how
Yep, I'm demonstrating with my arms, so that's choke, from neck here, and for instance, my neck would be from here, so I would have this across from here, and then I'm closing it off here, pretty much the angle of his knee, and then every time I'm shimmying, I'm getting this right here to close the gap closer within my neck, and it's the same way that you can do it without having the neck across here.
So we'll continue on with the video then.
What do you want? I can breathe.
So he just did it again. He did it again. He did it again.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man. I will. Get up, get in the car.
It's just a small gestures, and then you'll see his shoulders slowly swag. Sorry.
Okay, so
Oh, sorry about that.
Yep. So what we'll do is we'll wait. We've stopped the video at this portion, and if you could just explain what you're seeing here,
Correct.
that leads you to believe this is a shimmy type move.
So explain now.
Correct.
Okay, cool. So the gestures and the movements is from his shoulders and the top, and he's just doing it with his knees. Not it's not an actual choke on with the hands. Now he's actually putting the same pressure as you would with your neck. And like I said, every time his shoulder is moving, he's pushing that pressure down on his neck from the shoulders to the knees, all the way from this ankle. And you will see his shoulder shift, and then you'll see the bottom of his knee shift, and his foot come off. The one time he took his foot off the ground and put multiple pressure. Now his foot's not on the ground. He's driving off his far foot.
And as you're seeing this, are you also seeing things on Mr. Floyd's face that you testified to earlier?
Correct.
All right. So let's continue with the video then.
Get up, get in the car. Mama. Get up and get in the car right. I can't. They gave y'all the opportunity to get in, bro. I told you can't win. My knee. You can't win, man. I'm through. I know you're in there, you didn't listen. That's the booby. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts.
Okay, and it was at that moment that the interference